Hey everyone, it's your good buddy Spider with another great episode of the show presented by Uncanny Media, your source for digital entertainment on the internet. I think that was a bit dramatic of an intro, but I liked it. I went with it. It's alright. How are you? How is everybody? How are you feeling? What do we got going on? It's been weekly weather report. It's been unseasonably warm here in September in Ohio. It actually got warm enough that I turned on my air conditioner again. Usually by this time I've taken it out of the window completely. I've packed it away, ready for next year, and it got warm enough. It's been up into the 80s plus, which is pretty warm for September. I mean, we usually get sometimes 70s, of course Fahrenheit, because this is United States measuring for anybody overseas listening. But it's just been warm. It's just been awfully warm. And warm enough that I've just been actually sweating, which is ridiculous because I historically have never been a very sweaty guy. But as I've gotten older and as I've gotten larger, I've sweat more. So it's been uncomfortable for me. No rain. It hasn't rained in a while. It has not rained in a while. The neighbor's grass is turning brown. The plants out back are not looking too happy. But we have a bunch of plants inside the house that we've moved into because the weather was getting colder, and we expected them to have to be in here for the winter, and it has not wintered yet. So we have several plants inside the house being relatively unobtrusive. If you listened to my episode a few episodes ago where I talk about the houseplant apocalypse, you'll understand what I'm talking about with all that. But they haven't been too bad. Everything seems to be manageable. News. Any big news that I've got going on? I have a big announcement. I'm not announcing it here. I have an announcement coming Thursday, as of this recording. Thursday, September 18th of 2025. That's the next episode of This Uncanny Earth. Now, Rob will be the moderator for that episode. And he's going to be doing biomedical engineering. Let me type a quick message here. There we go. Got business to do. Speaking of This Uncanny Earth. But I have a big announcement for a new partnership that's going to take place on This Uncanny Earth on Thursday. You won't want to miss it. There's going to be a video package. And it's exciting. It's another great opportunity and another great individual and a great business I'm looking forward to announcing. And of course, you already know we're affiliated with the Musicians Hangout from the West Coast. And we're affiliated with Cooking Basically. We're also affiliated with the writing team at Evanescence and Big Buff Records here in Ohio. So a lot of good stuff coming up. We're increasing our reach. We're going further and further and further. So you won't want to miss that. It's at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. This Thursday, September 18th, 2025. Oh, and there's a cat puking under a spot where it's inconvenient to clean. Welcome to life. I don't edit these episodes after I've recorded them. They are what they are, so this is what you get from... But what are we talking about tonight? What are we talking about tonight? This is another personal episode for me. I mean, they're all personal because they're all... Every episode is basically things that somehow involve my life peripherally. Peripherally. I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying that right. On the periphery of my life. Except for maybe like the wrestling stuff, because that's just stuff I enjoy, you know. But we've talked about my childhood. We've talked about my musical taste. I don't know if we've gone through my entire employment history, because I don't know if that would be interesting. Maybe we'll do that next time. I've done a lot of jobs, believe it or not. I have done several different fields. But this is another part of my personal history. I'm not going to be naming any names. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. People who might tune in to listen may know that, oh, that's me. He's talking about me. And I'm going to try to be complimentary for most people. There's a few people who kind of hurt my feelings and things. But we're going to be talking about my romantic life. Not in a weird, not in a weird grungy way. Like, I'm not going to tell you what I do in my bedroom. I'm not going to tell you about my sex life. Okay? I mean, this is going to be on the outer edges of that because sexuality has things to do with romance, but I'm not going to get into any of those details. It's not that kind of a show. I'm not going to go into like, oh, scandalous, oh, he likes to do this, oh, he likes to do that, and she liked it when he did this. No, I'm not doing that. If you're looking for that kind of thing, go find a different show. I'm not going to embarrass anybody or put anybody on the spot. If they feel embarrassed or put on the spot, well, you know, that's on them, I suppose. You know, but I'm going to talk about my entire relationship history from then to now. And I'm going to talk about what I felt at the time and the reasons for some of this and how... Because this is another area that was complicated for me, because I've never been, on some level, I felt like I was good at being with people, and on another level, I feel like maybe I wasn't. I've definitely let some people down, and on the other hand, some other people have let me down, and I think it's give and take, and that's all romantic relationships, whether they're serious, meant to be for life, or whether they're just short-term things, and we're going to go through it. We're going to go through it. When I was a kid, I was a bit of what they would call a late bloomer. I didn't get interested in relationships when many other people my age did, which was in high school when you're a teenager and the hormones start running and things of that nature. People start having high school sweethearts and girlfriends and things, and I didn't get into that for a while. Like, people would say, oh, why don't you talk to so-and-so, and be like, no, because I don't like girls. And then that got the impression, because other people had thoughts. This didn't occur to me at the time. I didn't think about it. It was a crazy thought. But this got into the idea that I was into dudes. And, I wasn't. And I'm still not. And I don't mean that in a way that maybe other people shouldn't. Anything like that. People like who they like. I'm a very 100%. I am a straight male individual. And I like female people as far as relationships go. I'm 100% firm on that. So, it gave people weird impressions about me, even though I didn't I don't know. I don't know if I gave off any sort of vibes or anything, because I was not very self-aware at the time. This was early high school, like freshman, sophomore year, so I'd be probably, I don't know, 13, 14, something like that. Probably 14, because usually by the time you graduate, you're 18, as far as schooling goes. I hadn't shown any interest in girls my age or when or anything like that. Now, secretly, I did have thoughts about things. I did like some things that I saw. I liked some attributes, but I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want it to be a thing. I was just like, whatever. No, I'm into listening to my Weird Al music and my funny stuff and playing games and playing with my Legos and stuff. I didn't want to grow up. I played a lot of card games like Magic the Gathering and things, which, I still have those today. But I buried my mind in these things, in books, in other pursuits. So, eventually, I got into the marching band, of course. And I met a girl that I was into. And she was a friend of another friend of mine. And they were super tight. And they're probably still friends today. I don't know. I don't really... I'll get to that. I ended up being interested in her. And being interested in... She was like a year older. She'd been... I don't think she'd been held back a year, but she used to live in New Jersey or something, and the school system was different. So when she was in Pennsylvania, where I went to school... I don't know, the way that they enrolled her was different. From what I remember, I mean, if she's out there and she's listening, feel free to correct me. It's been a long time. Okay, it's been like 30-some years, right? But, so, I ended up being interested in her, and we got along. And we talked about comic books, and we talked about music. She was a fan of Lords of Acid, which I had never heard of until then. And I liked them because they were industrial. They were like industrial dance music and things of that nature. We're not going to get into the definition of that, but if you know them, you know them. If you don't, you might not want to. Or you might be interested. Who knows? You might have certain feelings. Because they got into different things. But, I don't even remember exactly how we got together. I think we were at a marching band. We were at maybe one of the football games, because for high school football, the marching band would show up and we'd play songs for the team. It was either that or a competition, because our band would go to other towns and we would compete against other marching bands and how well you could march around the field and how well you did the music and, different things. I don't remember exactly what the situation was. But eventually I worked up the courage to be like, hey, what do you think? Do you want to be... I don't even remember how I asked her. I just know that at some level I asked her to be my girlfriend. And she said yes. And I was full. I was full of hormones at the time. And to some respect, I'm sure she was too. I don't want to speak for her. But so we worked up to holding hands, and then we worked up to physical things, and we were pretty much like all over each other all the time. We didn't do the deed, so you would call it, in high school. But we were definitely like touching all over the place. And again, I'm not saying this to try to make an exciting show or to to make it like, oh ho ho, it's controversial, it's a titillating show, haha. I'm just saying that's how we were at, and I didn't really understand the consequences of any of that kind of stuff. It was, here was a person who I liked to be around, I liked to talk to. They made me feel good in both a mentally and a physical way. And we had kind of a whirlwind sort of romance for two kids in early high school. And she was afraid that what we were doing would eventually lead to us going the full distance and her getting pregnant and different things, and she wasn't ready for that. And it started to freak me out because, and I broke up with her in a really unceremonious kind of jerk sort of way. It really was. I was not, I could have done better, or I could have talked to her first or done something, Retrospect. It's history now. So that led to us having a breakup. Now, that had some bad feelings. She was genuinely upset. I was upset. Everybody was upset. Like all of our, we had the same friend circles, and they were all upset. Mostly mad at me. I was the bad guy. Clearly, I'd made a mistake, but I stuck my guns. I briefly had 2 relationships after her. Neither one of them got very physical. One of them lasted like a day, to a friend of mine who was also from marching band, but she'd had kind of like a little bit of a crush on me, and I thought she was kind of cute, but I wasn't thinking much about it. And her friends kind of pushed us into it, and she wasn't ready for it. So we ended up, she called it off within like a few days. And then the other girl was friends with my sister, and again, like, it was one of those things where we were kind of attracted to each other, but we didn't know a lot about each other, and we hung out a few times, and then it just, things just didn't work. We didn't argue, we didn't have fits, anything like that. It didn't work. So I have been dumped more times than I have dumped other people. I will admit to that. Now, whether that means I'm the bad person in the relationship every time, I don't know. I don't think so. I do admit that during this time frame, I was not knowledgeable. I was not very smart about it. I was intelligent about so many things in life, but I couldn't figure out certain things about relationships and what people needed. But we were kids. Anything in high school I don't think really counts until, if you can carry a high school relationship afterwards and make it work and grow as people, which some people have done. Many people have married their high school sweethearts, and that works out fine for them. But I didn't know what I was doing. I don't think any of us did, to be perfectly honest. After a couple of those relationships, towards the end of that, and I believe after graduation, after I'd moved out, it was a few years. It was a few years after I'd graduated and I moved out. I told you about how I'd taken that trip to Kentucky. I got back together with the first girl, who, we'd had the whirlwind romance and everything. And we lived in different towns. Like, we were basically 20 miles away from each other. And I didn't drive. I had to have people drive me around yet. I didn't have a car yet. And so we got back together. I thought it was going to work this time because we were out of school. We didn't have those distractions to worry about. Everything was good. It turned out that my best friend at the time, who we don't talk anymore, he hates me for whatever reason. He blames it on... He had developed a crush on this girl Okay, because we were part of the same circle. We had a circle of friends that always hung out and that always did things together, which was detrimental to everybody because we didn't go hang out with other people and everybody was kind of stuck on each other. And he'd been trying to work up the nerve, or he'd been trying to talk. I guess he had been actually. He'd asked her out a few times and she had said no because she wasn't interested. He was being really pushy about it. And when we got together, occasionally, because me and him were friends, I would say, hey, can you give me a ride? Let's go out there and so I can visit her and then we can all hang out. Because we were all supposed to be friends at the same time, even though she and I were in a relationship. I guess during all that time, he was kind of simmering about it because he felt like I was rubbing it in that I had gotten back together with her when that's what he wanted, and he was mad the whole time. And I didn't know. But she and I got back together, and I thought it was going fine. We got physical again, and we were careful. We used protection, and we tried a couple times. We were both still, we still didn't know what we were doing. We were fumbling around. I don't think we ever quite got it right, to be honest. I'll admit to just, we didn't know. She eventually sent me an email that said that we were just too different. We didn't have enough in common, and that we weren't going to work. And she broke up with me via email. Sneeze coming. Excuse me. And that, at this time, we were long out of school. I was working. I'd moved out of my folks' house. I was living, like I said, we were 20 miles apart. I was working at a restaurant, washing dishes, my first job. And it broke me. It busted me. Because I thought this time I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to get it right. I really like her. I really care about her. I think we're going to do this. And it just broke me. And I didn't know what to do. And I tried to convince her otherwise. And she said no. And I don't even remember the time span between that and between what happened next. But at some point, because I would walk to work. I lived within not even a full mile from the restaurant I worked at and where I lived at home. So I'd walk to work because I didn't drive yet. And one night I got out of work and I started walking home. And I walked past my home and kept walking. This was sometime during not deep winter, but it was when winter was still set, but it was when there was still snow in places. But it wasn't freezing cold, but there was still snow, and it hadn't yet hit spring yet here in Ohio. I walked past my house. I kept on going. I walked down the highway. And I kept going. And I walked from where I worked across 2 states because, again, I worked in Ohio and she lived in Pennsylvania. So I kept walking and I walked those 20 miles in the cold, at night, dark. I'll get to that in a moment, but I walked and I walked and walked. I walked all the way to her house and knocked, and she was surprised, like, oh, hey, what are you doing here? I was like, hey, let me talk. And I went in and I said, hey, I really care about you. I want to stay together. Can we make this work? And she said no. she said no after all of that. So she gave me a sandwich because I didn't know what else to do. So she gave me a sandwich, and her older sister, who was there at the time, convinced her boyfriend to wake up and be like, "Hey, we got to take him home because he can't walk again." Because I could not walk back. I had walked all that distance. I was exhausted. My knees were shot. And so her older sister's boyfriend they rode along and they drove me home. And I was in a lot of pain. I was in a lot of pain, both physically and emotionally, because she still said no after that. I thought, you know what, this is a dedicated, she'll see how dedicated I am to her. She'll see how committed I am to making this work. And she didn't go for it. And so my knees have never been the same since. I have sore knees. I have bad knees. They ache sometimes because of that walk. But that's how things happen. Now, I don't recall the order of some of the other things that followed. Like, time has been strange. And I don't... My memory is not perfect on the next several years. So I'm going to try to figure it out how... I remember the people. I don't necessarily remember the time. And I think that's fine, because the people are what's important. But I eventually got together with the girl that I said from my last episode that I went to, that lived in Columbus, that had been part of that same circle of friends. See, I was still plumbing that circle of friends for people that I knew. I got together with her. You guys know how that turned out. Then we lived in a duplex that was split down the middle. So we had neighbors on the other side of the house. And I'd go over there and I would hang out with them and watch WrestleMania and stuff. And there was a niece. She was old enough. She was older than me. Right? She was older than me by a year or two. So it's not, nothing weird happened. There's no age stuff going on. Okay, we don't do that. But there was a niece that had a troubled history, and she would stay there once in a while between boyfriends. And that probably tells you everything that you need to know. She was seeing one of my roommates, who was kind of a jerk. I don't hate the dude. I mean, he was kind of a jerk, but I was kind of a jerk. I mean, everybody was kind of a jerk in this situation. And he would argue with her, and he would come close to, like, wanting to swing at her and things, which made him a worse person in my eyes. And so this girl, I was over there, I'd been drinking, I'd been watching, and I was laying on the couch, and I stayed after the event was over, and the other neighbors had gone to sleep, but she and I stayed awake, and we talked, and she came on to me, and I went for it, and we went through with it, and we had a thing back and forth for a little while. Of course, the dude who was my roommate got pissed about it, understandably. That had a big fight between all of us. And she was unapologetic. She's married now with a few kids, and I guess her life is fine. So, because I check in with people once in a while. I don't talk to them necessarily, but I just see how people are doing, because I'm concerned. But at the time, she ended up getting with a lot of dudes. And I didn't know any better. I was just a dumb kid trying to get, trying to have some. I was just trying to get myself off and not worry about it. So there was that thing, and I stopped hanging out with her, and he was mad, and she was mad, and everybody was mad. And I'd been talking with a girl online for years, since I was still in high school. And we knew each other really well, and we talked. She lived in California. And eventually she was like, hey, you know what? You're having all these problems back home. Why don't you come visit me in California? Let's hang out. Maybe we'll try something. Maybe, because I like you and you like me, and let's try something. So I scraped my money together. I got a ticket. I managed to make sure I got a round trip ticket so I could come back home. And I went to California. And she and I hung out. We had a couple of good nights. And we just didn't, in person, we didn't really gel as well as we had through words online. And it didn't quite click the way that I mean, I kind of thought we were doing all right, but I was oblivious because I was pretty messed up in my head at the time. And I got back home. My one roommate had moved out, the one who'd been with the neighbor next door. He'd moved out. She'd gone back to wherever she was going because she'd only been temporarily visiting. So that mess was all done. And then the girl that I'd gone to see within like a week or two, she's like, you know what, I don't know if it's going to really work out. We're not exactly on the same page. And I was like, all right, that's fine. And that's kind of how things work sometimes. Sometimes you don't, especially when you're young. I was in my early 20s, and I was still full of hormones. I was basically just a large kid. I didn't know. That's not to excuse anything that I might have done. I don't want to use that as an excuse. I don't want to say that that's... If I hurt anyone or anybody's feelings, I'm not using that as an excuse. I own up to that. You know, I didn't mean to, but I didn't know any better either, so... So that didn't work out. Her family liked me, though. Her family loved me in California. They offered me a job and everything if I ever decided to move out there. After that, I had a couple of one-night stands. And I'm not glorifying that. I'm not saying that as like, hey, I could just go out and collect women. I talked to some girls online, one of whom we hung out. We had some good times physically. We did some talking, and we talked about maybe making a permanent relationship out of things, and then we didn't, and then we just stopped talking. Another girl I talked to online, and I picked her up and brought her home, and we watched a movie, and then we did what we did, and then we talked a little bit after that, but it didn't really progress. And so I was really unfulfilled from all that. The girl after that was somebody who was a fan of the band. When I was with Beneath the Scars, I was in the metal band, and she knew other members of the band. And we hung out a little bit. I think she expected me to act a certain way, and then I didn't because I was unsure. I thought, you know what, I'm not picking up the right signals, and so I didn't capitalize on anything. And I say that in a way not to be like, I didn't capitalize as if I, was owed an opportunity to get physical. I didn't pick up on what she was putting out, and she lost interest. And so we didn't work out there. After that was a very tumultuous situation. I know I'm going kind of rapid fire with some of this, but it getting too deep into it, there's no real reason to get into some of the details. But the woman after that was older than me, and she was married. And I'm not particularly proud of it. I don't want to make like a big deal like I got with a married woman, ha ha ha, like I'm bragging about it, because it caused a lot of problems. But I was working then. I was working at the hospital in town. I was working in the kitchen, and I was working doing floor maintenance and cleaning the floors and cleaning patient rooms and things. And there was a lady who worked the front desk in the ER, and she got interested in me, and she would talk to me, and so I would talk to her, and we would talk, and things got to the point where I said, "Hey, do you want to hang out?" And we hung out one day, and I invited her over to my house, and things got a little physical. And from there, we had more encounters. We did more things, which were not right. I mean, she was married. I had no right, but I was just, I was very selfish. I was very selfish, and she had no intention of getting a divorce or anything. It was very selfish on both of our parts. And we kept that up for a little while. I don't know how long. I don't remember exactly how long it lasted. But we had a lot of times together. And we would email each other, lovey-dovey graphic notes and things, graphic emails. And her husband eventually checked her emails for whatever reason. He got suspicious of something and found out what was going on. And so that was the end of that. And, it was not fair of me. I'm not going to say in any way that I was in the right or that she was in the right or that we had any right to do what we were doing. But that's what happened. They are, as far as I know, still together today. They decided to stay together. They worked things out, and I don't know the details of that. She broke off most contact because it was, it was appropriate not to keep talking to me, and I said all right, and that's what happened. And it was a weird time for me. It put a lot of things in perspective to have somebody who was older than me be interested in me, but it be a problem because what was I doing trying to mess with somebody's relationship? Again, after my roommate and the neighbor girl, right? So it put me in a weird spot because I had to look at myself and be like, what are you doing? What kind of a person are you? You're ruining people's relationships. You're the other dude in things. Like, do you have any guilt? Do you have any remorse? What's wrong with you? So it was a while before I had any serious aspirations. But I was playing with the band. And you know what? I think maybe she was before the other girl that had been fans of the band. I don't know. Again, time is iffy here in my memory. I was also going through my substance abuse phase, and I was dealing with that, which may have had something to do with where my mind was at the time. There's a lot of factors involved with all of that. But fast forward a little bit, and every year in Pennsylvania, where I went to school, there's a fair. I went to school in Albion, Pennsylvania. It's the Albion County Fair. It's every year around this time in September. It's probably over now. It's probably been over a day or so, but it usually runs in the second week of September. And I remember having a conversation. One of the other band members, one of his girlfriends, or not one of his girlfriends, but his girlfriend was there with one of her friends. And I told him a story that was kind of scandalous. I'm not going to repeat it here. And I talked to her a little bit. She was kind of, and I didn't pick up on it at the time, but she was kind of into me. She liked me. As far as what she'd seen, I mean, she'd watched me perform. She thought I was attractive. And later on, the band was playing at some spot, I believe in Geneva, Ohio. And I was sitting with this girlfriend of our bass player and one of her other friends. And they started asking me, they say, hey, do you know our friend such and such? And I said, well, I guess so. I mean, I've seen, because we were all did Facebook at the time. I said, I've seen her on your Facebook and whatever. She said, yeah, she thinks you're kind of cute. You know, can I give her your number? And I was like, well, all right. And I wasn't thinking much of it at the time. I just thought, oh, here's somebody that's interested in me. That's cool. And so, you know, I gave them the information, and they were happy because they could play matchmaker. And so I talked to the girl in question online for several weeks. We talked, we got to know each other, you know, we didn't make any serious plans because by that point I was trying to be better in my relationships. I didn't want to do the whole thing where I was just latching on to everybody who thought I was interesting. I didn't want to have one night stands. I didn't want to get with people who were with other people. You know, I was trying to be better. And at some point I had to go, the girlfriend of the bass player, because we were all friends, and I wasn't trying to get with her or anything. It wasn't some, you know, but she needed a ride somewhere. And I said, all right, well, I can give you a ride. I got gas. It's fine. Because dude was busy or something like that, whatever. And we get messages. Like, she gets a message on her phone. She gets a call, and she's like, oh, hey, you know, so-and-so is going to just coming in town. She's going to be here. And I was like, really? Let's go meet her. And so we went to meet her, and it was instant. Like, she got out of the car, we hugged, we went someplace else to hang out as a group, and I decided then, I was like, I'm going to ask her out. And she went outside for something, and I followed her out and said, hey, you know what, this is kind of awkward, but do you maybe want to be my girlfriend? And she was like, yes. And from there, we were together a lot. We went to shows all the time because I was with the band. She stayed over at my house all the time. She was going to college at the University of Akron. But she would make the drive down, and she would stay with me overnight. And that's the time when I got the most experience. And I don't want to say this as a brag or as a, like, hey. I got the most physical experience with a woman while we were together. And I went 100%. I figured, you know what, this is the one. I'm 100% in love with her. She's the one, and we had a lot of great times. We had a lot of excellent times together. Talked about a lot of things, got through a lot of situations. And we had one moment where we had kind of an issue, and we took a break for a little while, but then we got back together, and I said, you know what? I want to make this work. She was living in Akron, like I said, because she was going to school there. And I said, you know what? I want this to work. I want to be with you for the rest of my life. So I moved. I moved to Akron. I cut everything off. I left the band because I didn't have a choice. And I moved to Akron to be closer to her. And for a little while, it was okay. And then it wasn't. And I don't... We've talked about it since. Like, I won't lie. We've had communications since then. And we've kind of patched things up, but not in a way that we're not together, obviously. But we cleared up some things between us, which feels good. I feel better about it, knowing certain things. But she broke up with me, and it tore me to pieces. It completely destroyed me. I didn't know. I couldn't trust anything in life anymore. I couldn't trust anybody. I couldn't trust anything. I didn't understand what had happened. I didn't understand. And it was just looking back on it, I think we could have worked through it, but we both just were kind of blindsided with certain things, and there were other external factors going on both sides, some on her side, some on mine, and I didn't know about some of the things going on her end until after the fact. And I kind of resent some of that, but not. I don't resent her. I resent some of the other people who pushed certain things. But and that destroyed me, because I felt at that time that I was growing as a person. I was not, I wasn't just that kid looking to get a piece here and there. I was trying to build a foundation. I wanted to be with one person for the rest of my life. And so when I was in that phase, and I was completely just like, everything sucks, I'm in the worst part of my life I've ever been in, that's when I met the woman who would become my wife. And it's crazy how things turn out. It's just... Because initially I was attracted to her, but I was feeling shitty. To be perfectly honest, I was just like, this is... And I wasn't driving again because my truck had broke down completely. The engine was shot, and I was having to take the bus to work. I was in a bad place. I had moved away from my friends, away from my family. I was 2-3 hours away from everything that I was familiar with in a new city, a new town, trying to make things work. And I was just not right mentally. But this girl shows up for orientation, and we start talking, and we talk for the next, I don't know how long it took, maybe a few weeks, a few months, I don't know. And we talked about comic books, and we talked about games, and we talked about different things, and she was seeing somebody at the time. I didn't move in on her while, I wasn't following that same pattern. I know some people are thinking, oh, she's seeing somebody and you're hitting on her. No, I didn't make any moves. I didn't attempt to make it obvious. Like, I liked her, but I wasn't, like, pushing to do anything. Right? So one day she comes in, she's like, yeah, I broke up with my boyfriend because of this. And one of the things that apparently that sticks with her, I didn't intend for it to be like this, but the gears were turning. And I think I answered like, oh, well, that sucks. But I had this like look on my face that told her that I was just like not, like that it didn't suck at all. That it was like, hey, that's kind of interesting. Which is probably not fair. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember it, but she says this. So she, because I was riding the bus and everything, one day she was like, hey, you know what? I can give you a ride home. And I was like, all right, that's cool. And so I invited her in. I said, hey, do you want to come in, have a drink, meet my dog? Because I had my dog at the time. He was a great dog. And I didn't expect anything out of her. And she was like, yeah, sure, all right. So she came in, and we had a drink. She saw the dog, and then she went home. No big deal. But we decided to hang out again. And she said, yeah, because I said, you want to come over and watch a movie or something? And she said, yeah. So she came over. We watched The Descent, which is a horror movie, a creature feature. Like, ridiculously off-putting, but I was a fan of it. And then it was late, and we were like, well, what do you want to do? I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe we'll find some ice cream. So we spent minutes and minutes looking online for a place that was 24 hours that sold ice cream. We went to 2 different Baskin-Robbins restaurants that said they were 24 hours, and one of them wasn't. It was closed in this weird part of town. And then we found another. We got some ice cream. We came home and we shared ice cream in my apartment. And she stayed the night. I tried to get physical in certain ways, and she said, "No, we don't know each other that well. Let's not mess it up." So I didn't. But we thought, you know what? It might be good. We should keep hanging out. We should keep seeing each other. And then from then on, we did keep seeing each other, and we did start sleeping together, and we did. She spent more time in my house, in my apartment, than she did at her own house. She eventually let the lease run out at where she was living, and she moved into the apartment, and we have been together ever since. We've had our ups and downs. We've had our problems. It's how things go. I was in survival mode. I was not the easiest person to get along with. And she stuck with me through all of that. She stuck with my mental problems, my issues that I had. And it's funny because she's my wife now, but we did not have a wedding. We did not have a ceremony. We did not have a thing. We after my daughter was born, it became apparent that we were going to need to share insurance. And where she was working at the time, they didn't do much with insurance unless you were married or had like a documented domestic partnership is what it was called. And so we signed paperwork and we went to the courthouse and we had the courthouse oversee the paperwork, and that was it. So that's how we're married. We didn't have a wedding. There weren't any rings or dresses or anything. It's I don't know. Some people are going to think that's weird, but it's just how it is. We're together. We're raising my daughter, and I say that kind of flippantly, but it's after all of the other relationships that didn't work, this is the one that did. And like I said, we're still together today. We have the house here in Ohio, and we're doing what we do. And that's all. That is the entirety of my relationship history that I remember. Now, within that time frame, in between the various other moments where I was committed with different people, there were a couple other little like flings and things that I just can't remember all the details of. And I don't want to say that in a way that disregards the other person involved, because maybe she thought that it was more important than it was, but it didn't go beyond what it was. And it's strange in the modern age as far as dating and relationships go, because you can't just go out and meet people like you did, because there's a lot of things have become different over the last decade. We've had the Me Too movement. We've had a lot of things. And I can't imagine trying to go to like people go to bars to try to find dates. Like, I don't. That's ancient. That's antique. I don't know. It's a weird landscape for romance these days. And I don't know. I've always said. I've told my wife this. I've said, you know what? If something happens between you and me, that's it. I'm not going to be with anybody else. That's it. I'm not putting in the effort. I'm not putting in the time. I'm not going to do this again because I'm getting older. I don't have that kind of effort in me anymore to try to build up our relationship. And maybe again that sounds selfish, but and people will say, "Oh, well, you're not that old. You're in your 40s. You got plenty of time to meet new people." But I don't want to build a life with a person again at this stage. It's so much effort getting to know each other and getting used to each other and risking having something go wrong. I'm not going to do it again. This is the last one. If something happens here, then this is it. And we've been together now. It's been 17, 18 years, give or take. Something like that. It's been a long time. So I don't think anything's going to fall apart at this point. But if some disaster did happen and I ended up on my own, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to do it again. And people might look at that and be like, oh, that's sad. You could always and no, I don't see it as sad. I see it as just pragmatic. I see it as I've got things going on in my life. I've got other things that are important. I can't expect someone else to come in and share what I've got going on at this point without knowing ahead of time. Right? Because relationships are difficult as you age. When you're younger, they seem so simple. They seem easy. And even if they fall apart, you can always find a new one, it seems like. But as you get older, you start thinking differently. You start thinking about, how am I going to keep track of the household? How am I going to keep track of my kid? How am I going to keep track of my finances? How does another person factor into that? And it's just, at some point, it's just not worth the effort for me. And again, that makes me maybe sound like a bad person. Like maybe I'm selfish but I don't want to lead someone else on at my age. I don't want to lead somebody else on thinking that I'm going to be open to another big commitment, that I can put forth the same energy, that I can put forth the same thought processes, right? And I'm okay with that. I don't feel bad about that. If something happened in this relationship, I would not feel bad being by myself. I can take care of my own business as far as sexual satisfaction, if need be. There's plenty of ways to do that on your own. And this is not a show to discuss that kind of things, and I don't want to gross anybody out. I'm just saying, I can handle my own business, right? Emotionally, I don't think I could be invested in another person at this point. I think at a certain age, I feel like you've given what you can give, and anything more like that, it's just stressful, and it's hurtful, and if it doesn't work, it's going to hurt everybody involved, and I don't want to hurt anybody else. I don't want to hurt anybody else, is the bottom line. I'm not as concerned about myself. I just don't want to hurt anybody else. So, but right now everything is fine. That's kind of a down note. Like people go, oh, that's a really dark turn to take for this episode. Everything is fine. I feel alright. My family feels okay. I think we have a good relationship right now. And that's how it goes. And it's been a long road to get here. I've been with a lot of people, and if anyone in that history that I just mentioned, if you feel like I've treated you badly, well, I apologize. Many times I was in a bad mental space, and I don't want to use that as an excuse. I want to own up to it. I want to say, you know what? I shouldn't have acted the way I did. I hope your life is going better. I hope your life is better whether I'm in it or not. Because I did not intend to cause it harm. And if I did cause it harm again, I apologize. I apologize for that. So we've hit an hour. We've hit all of my relationships that I can remember for the most part. I left out a couple of things because some things are really personal for me. Some things are particularly personal in a way that I don't want to put them out there in the public spectacle. But as far as the official history, this is the official history of my relationship status. And I appreciate you guys listening. And I appreciate everybody. Thank you to everybody out there who's ever been a part of my life in a romantic way. Because I hope I didn't hurt you. I hope I treated you well. And you helped me grow as a person. And that's what it's all about. It's about growing as people. So thank you. That's all I've got. Again, don't forget to check out the next episode of This Uncanny Earth on September 18th, 2025 for the next big partnership announcement. It's going to be awesome. And I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to have some food. And I'm going to play some games. And do what I do. So that's it. Have a good night.